Daniel's neural implant buzzed with the final docking sequence as the research vessel Kepler's promise synchronized with the Thurian orbital station. 3 years of preparation, 2 months of transit through fold space, and countless simulations had led to this moment. First contact with a species that had been watching humanity for decades. The airlock cycled with a pneumatic hiss. Daniel adjusted his biomonitor sleeve, watching his heart rate spike on the display. Dr. Sarah Chen, the mission's xenobiologist, placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember, Lieutenant Commander," she said, "the Thurians perceive electromagnetic fields. Keep your emotions steady." Daniel nodded, though he suspected that advice would prove impossible to follow. As the delegation's communications officer and linguistic specialist, he'd spent months studying Thurian physiology. Their sensory organs, bioluminescent patches along their temples and collarbones, could detect the subtle electrical patterns generated by human neural activity. They literally saw emotions as colored auras. The inner door opened. She stood at the center of the delegation, and Daniel's world contracted to a single point. The Thurians were humanoid, an example of convergent evolution that had shocked the scientific community. But Orla was something beyond the hollows and briefing materials. Her skin held the iridescence of deep ocean creatures, shifting between violet and silver as she moved. Her eyes were large and dark, with vertical pupils that dilated as she looked directly at him. The bioluminescent patches on her temples pulsed in rhythmic patterns he couldn't yet interpret. She was beautiful in a way that transcended species, in a way that made his chest tighten, and his neural implant register a cascade of dopamine and oxytocin that the biomonitor would definitely flag in his medical report. Orla's head tilted slightly, and the luminescent patterns on her skin changed, a ripple of soft gold spreading from her temples down her neck. Her thin lips curved into what the cultural briefings had described as the Thurian expression of intrigued curiosity. She'd seen it. She'd seen everything he felt. Daniel's face burned with heat that his suit's thermal regulators struggled to compensate for. He forced himself through the formal greeting protocol, his hand forming the gesture of open contact, palm forward, fingers splayed. The translator node in his ear converted his words into Thurian frequency patterns. "I am Lieutenant Commander Daniel Park, Communications Officer of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We come in peace and with gratitude for your welcome." Orla stepped forward and he caught the scent of her, something like ozone and night-blooming flowers. When she mirrored the gesture, her hand hovered centimeters from his. The electromagnetic field between their palms created a sensation like static electricity, but warmer, more intentional. "I am Research Coordinator Orla Shintari of the Thurian Scientific Collective." Her voice emerged from a translation device at her collar, rendered in flawless English with a melodic undertone. "Your arrival has been anticipated with great interest." The luminescence on her skin shifted again, deep amber with threads of crimson. According to his training, that indicated heightened emotional engagement. His own emotional response was probably broadcasting like a supernova. Dr. Chen stepped forward, mercifully drawing the delegation's attention to formal matters: exchange of scientific data, establishment of collaborative research protocols, cultural liaison frameworks. Daniel tried to focus on his duties, recording the meeting, monitoring translation accuracy, documenting the historical exchange. But his attention kept drifting to Orla, the way she gestured when explaining Thurian gravitational field research, the subtle harmonics in her speech that the translator couldn't fully capture, the intelligence in her eyes as she absorbed information about human neural architecture with a speed that suggested cognitive processing beyond human norms. Halfway through the meeting, during a demonstration of Thurian holographic data visualization, Orla moved to stand beside him. Her luminescent patterns had settled into a steady rose-gold shimmer. Your bioelectric signature is unusual, Lieutenant Commander, she said quietly, pitched below the main conversation. Human emotional responses typically show more variance and instability. Yours has remained consistently elevated and focused since we met. Daniel's throat went dry. I apologize if that's inappropriate. I don't mean to cause any diplomatic. I did not say it was inappropriate. The gold in her skin brightened. Among my people, such sustained focus is considered a compliment of the highest order. It suggests genuine interest rather than mere physical attraction. I'm not sure there's a clear distinction in this case, Daniel admitted, deciding that honesty was the only viable option when speaking to someone who could literally see his emotions. Orla's laugh was like wind chimes, crystalline and unexpected. Humans are fascinating. You experience the integration of physical, intellectual, and emotional attraction as a unified phenomenon. For Thurians, these typically develop sequentially over time. And for you, Daniel asked, immediately regretting his boldness. But Orla met his gaze directly. Her pupils dilated further, and the bioluminescent patterns across her visible skin synchronized into a complex dance of violet and gold. For me, this is also a novel experience. Your neurological patterns are aesthetically compelling. The way your thoughts generate electromagnetic fractals when you process linguistic data. The recursive loops when you attempt to maintain professional composure while experiencing what humans call infatuation. She could see all of it, every neuron firing, every hormone spike, every desperate attempt at emotional regulation. There was no hiding, no pretense possible. That must make human interactions exhausting to watch, Daniel said. On the contrary, Orla moved slightly closer. In the low gravity of the station, the movement had a floating quality. Most species broadcast their emotions inadvertently. Humans are unique in your constant attempts to conceal what you feel, even from yourselves. The contradiction between your internal states and external presentation creates beautiful complexity. So you're saying you find us dishonest? I am saying you are artists. Every human I have observed composes themselves continuously, performing their identity while feeling something entirely different beneath. It is like watching a symphony where the silence between notes carries as much meaning as the sound. Daniel felt something shift in his chest, a recognition deeper than attraction. And you can see all of it, the whole symphony. With you, yes. Her luminescence pulsed in a pattern he was beginning to recognize as pleasure. Your neurological activity is particularly vivid. When you look at me, I see cascades of association, linguistic pattern matching, aesthetic appreciation, projection of compatible personality traits based on minimal data, and beneath it all, a fundamental loneliness seeking connection. He should have felt exposed, violated even. Instead, he felt seen in a way he'd never experienced. Is that a human thing, the loneliness? It is a sentient being thing. Orla's hand rose, hovering near his face without touching. We Thurians are not as different as you might think. We also seek the one whose bioelectric signature harmonizes with our own, the one who makes our luminescence synchronize without conscious effort. Daniel's biomonitor was going to generate a medical alert if his heart rate climbed any higher. And has that happened for you? The patterns on her skin shifted into something he'd never seen before, a deep purple threaded with silver, like twilight reflecting on water. It is happening now, for the first time in my 3 centuries of life. 3 centuries. The reminder of her lifespan, Thurians lived 5 times longer than humans, should have been daunting. Instead, it made this moment more precious. She had existed for 300 years, had probably met thousands of species, and yet something about his human brain's electrical signature moved her. I don't know how this works, Daniel said. Between our species, the diplomatic protocols alone. Lieutenant Commander Park. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the moment. We need your translation support for the cultural exchange documentation. Duty reasserted itself. Daniel straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. But before he could step away, Orla's hand finally made contact, just her fingertips against his palm. The touch sent a tingle of bioelectric feedback through his neural implant. "The protocols will adapt," she said. "They must, because I intend to understand why a human's thoughts create such resonance in my perception, and because, unless I am misreading your continuous biosignature, you wish to understand the same about me." Daniel managed a nod, not trusting his voice. Over the following weeks, as the delegations worked to establish formal relations between their civilizations, Daniel and Orla found countless reasons to collaborate. Translation accuracy required extensive consultation. Cultural exchange demanded detailed explanation. Scientific cooperation necessitated long conversations about neurological architecture and electromagnetic perception. They were fooling no one, least of all themselves. One evening, station time was arbitrary, but humans maintained their circadian rhythms. Daniel found Orla in the observation deck. The view showed the spiral arm of the galaxy, a river of light against infinite dark. "Your scientists tell me," Orla said without turning, "that human pair bonding releases oxytocin, vasopressin, and dopamine in patterns that can persist for years. They say it is biochemistry, nothing more." "And what do Thurian scientists say?" Daniel joined her at the viewport. "That synchronized bioluminescence indicates compatible electromagnetic fields, that harmonized patterns suggest optimal genetic compatibility." She finally looked at him, her eyes reflecting starlight. "They also say it is biology, nothing more." "But you don't believe that." "I believe," Orla said, her luminescence shifting to that deep purple-silver he'd come to recognize as vulnerability, "that some connections transcend the mechanisms that create them. That the moment I perceived your neural patterns, I knew I had encountered something extraordinary." Daniel took her hand, properly this time, their bioelectric fields creating a feedback loop that his neural implant registered as warmth and rightness. "I fell for you the moment we met, and I think somehow you knew that before I did." "I saw the possibility before you felt it," Orla agreed. "But knowing and experiencing are different things. Every moment since, I have been falling in synchronization with you." In the observation deck of a Thurian station, orbiting a world humans had only just learned existed, two beings from species separated by light years of evolution found what all sentient creatures sought: someone who saw them completely and chose them anyway. Orla's bioluminescence pulsed in steady waves of gold and violet. Daniel's neural patterns painted fractals of hope and joy that she could perceive like visual music. Their two-species first contact would be remembered for many reasons, but neither of them would forget that it was also the moment they found each other. "The mission parameters are for 6 months of collaborative research," Daniel said. "Then we have 6 months to convince our respective governments that extended cultural exchange is vital to interspecies relations." Orla's expression held the Thurian equivalent of a mischievous smile. "And after that?" "After that," she said, her fingers interlacing with his, their bioelectric fields dancing together, "we write new protocols, because some things are worth building new frameworks for." Daniel pulled her closer, the low gravity making the movement fluid and natural. "I can work with that." In the silence of space, witnessed only by distant stars, a human and a Thurian stood together at the viewport, their combined light reflecting in the glass, proof that connection transcends the mechanisms that create it, and that sometimes falling in love happens in an instant that echoes across lifetimes.